Greetings, family. Welcome to Dark Mondays. I'm Dr. True Red, Alpha Female, your host. Thank you for joining us for Real Talk on this conscious platform. We're here today in Montclair, New Jersey with Brother Joseph Graham, activist, equity advocate, educator, and co-founder of Vision and Dreams Foundation.
Correct.
Welcome, Brother Joseph. Thank you so much for being here. Much appreciated.
Yes, indeed. Thank you for having me. I'm really appreciative of this opportunity.
So I'd like to start by starting with your most recent battle.
Okay.
And those of us who are true activists, children's activists in New Jersey, understand that there are many battles in this war, fighting for our children. So I'd like to start with your first battle, and you were hired as equity advocate by the Montclair School District to act on the behalf of black children.
Absolutely.
I'd like you to start by explaining exactly what the position entailed. What is an equity advocate?
Okay.
Speak up.
All right. And so the name of the position is the Student Equity Advocate.
Mm-hmm.
And it was the Montclair Public School District that had the position. And the position was designed by black parents.
Okay.
To be more specific, the National Independent Black Parents Association, the NIBPA
Mm-hmm.
chapter in Montclair, headed by Kalia Sweat. And they're the ones who put pressure on the district because in the town of Montclair, like many other towns,
Mm-hmm.
that has the reputation of being liberal, being
Right.
about diversity and inclusion,
Mm-hmm.
the black parents knew that that was not the experience taking place with their children in the school district, and said, since that's what you claim to be about, then you need to create positions that reflect that desire.
Okay.
And that's where the creation of the position came from. What's extraordinary is the duties and responsibilities of the position.
Okay, so explain that to us. Tell
So
us
there's
a little
many
bit about that.
layers. There's many layers to that,
Mm-hmm.
in no particular order. One of them was to collect and analyze data, school data, to look
Mhm.
at the inequities in the district and come up with strategies and methods to correct these problems. When I say inequities, I'm talking about the disproportionate way that black boys are shoved through special education,
Right.
the disproportionate ways that black children receive school discipline at a level much different and much higher than all other children in the district. The underrepresentation of African American children in advanced courses, in math courses,
Right.
in dual enrollment, where you have the opportunity to not only be a high school student but also get college credits at the same time.
Mm-hmm.
So there's truly a different life that black children as a whole were experiencing in the Montclair Public School District that doesn't match the reputation. So that's just
Absolutely.
one. The other thing was that if a parent or a student or even a staff member felt that there was a situation where black children were being treated unfairly or being discriminated against,
Right.
they could reach out to me, bring it to my attention,
Mhm.
and it was my responsibility to make sure that the district looks into the situation, and
Right.
if it's found to be true, to hold someone accountable,
Right.
and then create policy and procedure to assure that this is not duplicated and that it doesn't happen again.
Uh-huh.
So having town meetings
Right.
and meeting with families, giving strategies to district leaders. I even created something called the Student Support Report, where I was able to identify every child in the district having a behavioral or academic problem.
Right.
And the design was meant to meet with the principals of the school
Mhm.
and meet with the administrators and over the list of children that my analysis produced, so that we could head off and prevent the historical generational problems.
Right.
So that was just a smidgen of what my responsibilities
So I have a
were.
question. So this position was created so you could be like a liaison, right?
Absolutely.
Between the administrators of the district and the parents. What was happening when the parents noticed that their children were being discriminated against, being tracked? Because the tracking of black students, particularly boys, is entrenched in the fabric of this country, period. It is a practice that has gone on to keep our kids in place, to not allow them to progress. So I want to know, what were the results when parents would take on this task? right? Because we think that parents have a voice, and if you see a situation occurring, you as a parent will go in front of the board. What was happening when they attempted that?
Well, before, one of the reasons why the parents pushed for the position, because historically, whenever they had addressed issues, they were sidestepped, ignored, and the situation was never resolved. And you're dealing with sometimes parents who are working 2-3 jobs, just trying to maintain, so they don't have the time to keep coming back and forth to the school, nor the resources to hire legal representation. So when parents began to come to me once they discovered my role existed, they were behind me 100%.
So you had support from the parents?
Oh, absolutely. I had support. And I want to be really clear about this, because we know that a strategy of the enemy and the status quo was always divide and conquer.
For sure.
I had black parents who were my #1 supporters, but I also had school administrators, teachers, and social workers and principals who of various different racial backgrounds who did support me. And but the foundation of my support was undoubtedly the black parents, and the bravery of the black students who would come and boldly tell me what they were going through and said, "Mr. Graham, please do something about it."
Right. And that is so disturbing to me, because again, we're in Montclair, liberal Montclair. I grew up in Bergen County, liberal Teaneck, and we see that historically, even though these are liberal towns, there is still the undercurrent of the fabric of the systemic racism that we're all enduring. And the problem that I have, as you mentioned, is that it breaks my heart to see that our kids are struggling and they have to deal with this on their own. So I think your position, I mean, is something that needs to be in every school district, not even just in New Jersey, across the nation.
Absolutely.
So the kids that you're dealing with are elementary school, high school students as well?
Yes, my position put me as a district officer, which means that the entire district, all of the 1 high school, the 3 middle schools, and the 7 elementary schools were all within my jurisdiction. And so children of all of those different schools or parents would reach out to me for support. And so all of the schools in the Montclair Public School District was a part of my responsibility.
So how did the teachers respond to your findings? Because you talked about tracking, you talked about unfair measures of discipline that are inflicted among black children, particularly black boys. When you addressed this, particularly with the teachers, right, in the classroom, how did they respond? Were they accepting of your findings?
That's a good question. I would say there's the tale of 2 teachers, right? You had the teachers who were open to constructive criticism, because it's not like the moment a child tells me something, I reacted as if it was true. You have to do an investigation, you have to ask questions, you have to have a dialogue. And some situations are more severe than others. There's a wide range, just so you can know. It could range from this teacher always picks on me in class to this teacher has said racial slurs. So it's a wide range of different things. And so sometimes it's purely a misunderstanding. Those teachers that meant well and they just needed some coaching in terms of cultural responsiveness because they're dealing with a demographic that's opposite from them that they know nothing about. Some of them, it was nothing more than a workshop or a session, a period of education that they needed. That's one teacher.
That's one.
And they were supportive.
For sure.
We could sit down and have what you call restorative justice, real restorative justice, not the mockery of that was created in this town. That's another conversation. Where you really sit down with the offended party and the one who's being accused of an offense and say, let's work this out. That's one teacher. The tale of the other teacher are those that were following the leadership of the teachers union in the Montclair Public School District. The leadership not wanting to address the fact that we have racial discrimination happening in the district. And answering, I guess, the bell, because my position called to carpet situations that were happening. In a town where people want to believe that there's no problems, anybody exposing problems becomes a dangerous person. And so the leadership begin to plant seeds in teachers' minds and hearts that I was out to get them fired and that I was headhunting.
Right.
Well, that created fear because they did not know me.
Right.
So it got to the point that teachers that normally would have talked to me about problems begin to shun me, begin to be scared out of their mind. When I walked into the buildings, they would have a system where people would be called, Mr. Graham's in the building, make sure you do not talk, their instructions. They had an emergency teachers meeting after school and were instructed not to talk to me, not to meet with me, because if you want to keep your job, do not work with Mr. Graham. So those teachers they became adversarial to me.
Right.
Now, to show you how do I know this, because many folks throughout the district anonymously came to and talked to me about what was said in these meetings. I did a professional development called Equity in Education, because many people don't know what equity is, and I'll get back to really breaking that down. I can't explain to you the tears that came after the meeting. They said, we thought you were a bad person. The
That's
things
a
that they're
divide and
saying
conquer.
about you. Exactly.
That's a divide and conquer that we know about.
Exactly.
That's often used.
Exactly. And so many of them came to me and they were like, I realized that now what they've been saying isn't true, and you're really trying to help children. Because there's some phenomenal teachers going above and beyond helping.
Right.
But just in the nature of their affiliation, wanting to keep their jobs, even many of them begin to separate themselves from it.
Right.
But about equity, what is equity? Equality's flaw is that it assumes that everyone is at the same starting point. So you give everybody the same thing.
Right.
But the reality, we know here in America that the head start that white children have had over black children is beyond historic.
Absolutely.
We live in a nation where it was illegal to teach black people how to read. That means to teach a black child how to read.
Right.
So there's no way in the world.
You get hanged,
or you get hung,
raped, dragged, all those things.
Exactly.
Simply to learn to read.
Exactly.
Right.
And so you couple that being the beginning of black children's educational life in this country, along with the systematic racism of trying to keep our children back. We're not in the same space and place when it comes to opportunity and access to be so-called successful in education. So equity is about meeting a child where they are and giving them the support that the system lacked to provide to them so that they can be successful. That's what equity does. Equity by nature is to identify that there has been a systemic problem that we need to systemically correct.
Absolutely. And we also have to stop looking to this system of miseducation to educate our children, because it was not set up for that function. And so parents have to be more involved and be aware of exactly the things we're talking about. We're talking about the pipeline from the system of miseducation to prison. You know, whether or not you want to accept it, it's there. And we know about that. And we know that once black boys, I think it's when they get to 4th or 5th grade, the white teachers who've oftentimes never even been around black people begin to feel them as threats. And so that's when they start to be seen as young men, and they get treated as such.
Absolutely.
And so I again want to commend the parents here in this district for really getting themselves together and speaking out.
Absolutely.
And you have that back.
Absolutely.
You have that back from them.
Oh, yes.
So what was their response when they found out that you were no longer here in the district? Because I have to say, to catch the people up to focus, up to speed, that your position was terminated, was dissolved in March of 2020 without explanation.
Absolutely.
So talk to me a little bit about that.
So the hostility, I started April of 2018. And in November of 2018, the board asked me to do a presentation on things that I had discovered. And so I had met with, people throughout the district, students throughout the district, and my report was based upon the feedback and the things that I discovered. And to be quite honest, I don't know what's more inflammatory, the response that I got, or the lies that were created following it. Because there was nothing that I reported that's not happening all over America.
Right.
That's the reality.
Right.
And so from that point on, though, because I threatened the reputation of the town being diverse
and liberal,
it became imperative for folks acquiescing to the status quo, to villainize
Yes.
me, and to attack my character.
Yes.
From that point on, I was attacked in many, many, many different ways. But even through it though, through the support of Kalia Sweat and the NIBPA and parents going to board meetings, every time someone tried to throw mud on my name, they would show up at the board meetings.
That's awesome.
and set the record straight.
Right.
I was able to, through the midst of it, we still were able to make progress.
Right.
And I also must say, Dr. Kendra Johnson, who was the assistant superintendent who hired me, who then became the superintendent 3 weeks after my hire, if it wasn't for her, I would not have even been in there as long as I was. But when she resigned in 2019, I believe she ended in August, it was known before she left that they were going to get rid of everybody she hired.
For sure.
And once she was gone, I was dealing with hostility while she was still here. But once she was gone, they hired an interim superintendent, Nathan Parker, and I'll give you an example. The best example I could give of him following Dr. Kendra Johnson was like Trump following Obama. And he told me that he didn't care anything about teachers being racist as long as they could teach.
Right.
And he didn't care nothing and did not believe in equity because that's that feel-good stuff.
Right. That's the feel-good.
That was the one and only conversation we had, and I, of course, intelligently disagreed with him respectfully. He never spoke to me again, and he then began to get other district officers who are not my supervisor. My contract says that only the assistant superintendent and the superintendent are my supervisor.
Right.
That was when they really began the campaign of not only dissolving my position, but creating it and making it something other than the student equity advocate. And they were trying to put me under the Department of Operations and trying to make me a glorified counselor.
Right.
So ultimately, they terminated my position in March of this year with no reason, no explanation other than the superintendent met with the board and we decided to terminate your position. That was it.
And that's it.
But they did not even, they still had my name on the website. They still had my role on the website and tried to make it seem like I was there.
Well, let me just stop you for 1 second. So the superintendent of whom you spoke clearly feels fueled because of the Nazi that we have at the White House. I mean, that has fueled him to be able to say that he doesn't care if a teacher is racist as long as she can teach, because that's something that, you know, the cowards have come from under their sheets and they feel comfortable with saying because we have the Nazi there. But I want to ask you, what kind of participation, if any, did you have from black teachers? How did the black teachers that have been in the district feel, and were they able to participate and back you in any way? With, you know,
there were extraordinary teachers, guidance counselors, and social workers that partnered with me to help the children. First of all, the original vision for the student equity advocate, or the equity agenda that the black parents pushed, was that there be a Department of Equity Curriculum and Instruction, because one person can't do the job. Right. So anyway, so I partnered with principals, teachers, social workers, and guidance counselors, and they were extremely supportive. But on the other side, some of them did not support as much as they desired to, because I told you there were pressure being put on them not to cooperate with me, regardless of the good work being done. So many of them began to separate themselves, except for a few that stood out.
Yeah, and there are ways, and I understand we all want to protect our positions, and, you know, I've had this in things that I've participated in, and we've had black teachers who were almost like spies. You know, you don't have to come out and stand front and centered, but there are things that folks can do, you know, to contribute. No matter what, and regardless of the pushback. You know.
Let me tell you, to that point about blacks being spies. First of all, we know that it's no secret that we are dealing with institutional racism. A system of racism in America. And we know that that is due to white supremacy, right? We know that. White people are in control and they do not want to give it up. That shouldn't be a shock to anyone. But the battle I was dealing with Montclair, I'm also dealing with folks that look like us, but are serving a white agenda. The leader of the teachers union was a sister
Yes.
who led the fight to discredit me and
Yes.
get teachers not to work with me. Another black woman who
Yes.
was one of the oldest district workers in the district for the Board of Ed,
Yes.
led the fight. She fought tooth and nail against my former superintendent, Dr. Kendra Johnson, and the equity efforts, did not want anything that we were doing
Yeah.
to continue, and was a part of the sabotage
Right.
of it.
Yes. Yeah.
And also, one of the board members, who's an African American, wanted to terminate my position a year before it actually took place. And this is an African American woman. That's why I
Right.
tell people, just
Yes.
because folks wear African head wraps, and
Absolutely.
because they look like, and just because now that it's popular to be about Black Lives Matter,
Black Lives Matter. Yes.
it does not mean that they are sincere.
Absolutely.
And that right there probably the most painful. And even in the midst
Yes.
of that, I'm still candid about dealing with them,
Yes.
because we know that a part of divide and conquer
Yes.
is to get pawns fighting with each other.
Yes.
See, I'm clear that they are pawns.
Yes. Yes.
I'm clear that they're working
They're
to
not
agenda.
clear.
They're either completely brainwashed or have sold their soul, or a combination of both.
Yes.
But the true reality is that the white agenda for the Board of Education running Montclair does not want to deal with the reality of racism in this town.
Exactly. In liberal Montclair.
Yes.
Let me say liberal Montclair so everybody is clear. Just because we hear liberalism does not mean that it encompasses genuine concerns about black folks. And today that is what we're talking about. We're talking about black people and our need to be compensated for everything that we have gone through and we continue to go through.
Yes.
And those black folks of whom you've spoken, I call gatekeepers.
Yes.
And my experience has been that educated Negroes who are gatekeepers are more dangerous to us than the white establishment. Because the white establishment, we know what they're doing.
Yeah.
The gatekeepers, we have no idea where their hand is.
Yeah.
And so for you, Brother Joseph, again, I want to say you have been a major contributor, and you still are. We recently learned, yesterday, we learned that Montclair has renamed your position, and it's now called the Student and Family Coordinator, I believe.
Yeah.
And so how do you feel about that? Speak about what their intentions are. Now it's no longer equity advocate. It is now Student and Family Coordinator position.
What's beautiful about the internet is that it's public record, right? If you Google student equity advocate duties and responsibilities, you will see how they broke down the job that I was hired to do.
Mm-hmm.
And I will say, the NIBPA, the Kalia Sweat and the Black Parents, did an extraordinary job identifying what our black children, not only in public school Montclair need, but any public school that has our children,
That's right.
they need a person operating by those rules. That's why I took the position in the first place.
Right.
But the fact that I actually was doing what the duties and responsibilities were,
Yeah.
and it threatened the status quo's
Yes.
agenda for perception,
Yes.
they fought against it. So I knew while I was still here, they want to change the position.
Yes.
And when Dr. Kendra Johnson left, the person that I said worked in the district in charge of operations,
Mm-hmm.
who was working with the superintendent to move me into a different department, which is contrary to my contract,
Yeah.
said that we want to change it to be more of a counselor kind of helping out.
Right.
And I was like, that's not what this role is supposed to be.
Right.
That's not what this responsibility is. It's about assuring that inequities are identified and corrected.
Right.
But they made the agenda. They wanted to.
So you felt that. So
Oh.
you felt that while you were executing the paradigm,
Yes.
right?
Yes.
You felt the pushback because
Yes.
those rocks were being turned over.
Yes.
And they don't like that.
Yes.
They don't want the truth to be told.
And they verbalized over a year and a half ago that they wanted to be more of a glorified counselor position. So just like you, I looked on the internet, and when I look at the name of the position, was it family?
Student and Family Coordinator.
Exactly. So what did they do? They eliminated equity, and they eliminated the advocate. I mean, it doesn't take, right? You know that show, Are You Smarter Than a Fifth Grader?
Right.
Any fifth grader can tell you
That's right.
that when a term is removed from the title, so is the mission that's attached to that term.
That's right.
So that means equity no longer is an agenda for them to accomplish or succeed at trying to establish, and advocacy is something that they do not want because you just eliminated it.
Right.
That is not me talking. That's something called common sense. So the reality is I saw this coming.
You saw it.
And knew that it would happen, and knew that my days were numbered. And I don't know if I said this earlier, since my leaving, parents found me on social media.
Right.
Facebook, everything's out there. They found me saying, where are you? Because they thought I was still working for the district and just inactive.
Right.
And I had to make it clear, oh, no. I have not become a yes man for anyone, and nor would I ever abandon our children. I'm no longer working for the district, but yet still doing everything I can do to help black children in the district.
Yes. And I can see clearly why they would not want you marching around Montclair with all this knowledge and consciousness in liberal Montclair.
Yeah.
Sure they didn't want it. You know, I just feel so disheartened and so saddened for the children, because I'm so tired of the black children, and I'm just speaking about New Jersey because this is where I live, and I know this is a microcosm of everywhere else.
Absolutely.
But I'm just so tired of our children having to deal with all of this. This is difficult for adults to deal with.
Yeah.
To deal with all this discriminatory treatment, and people just expect them to just move forward like it's nothing.
Absolutely.
And just very quickly, like I mentioned to you before, in Bergen County, we were dealing with the same thing the past 8 years. Black athletes, black student athletes being called monkeys, coons, niggers, while participating in athletic events, and nobody could do anything. Nobody. The kids were told to just act like they didn't hear it. Mm-hmm. And that is something that I'm not accepting of. And I want to commend Ms. Sweat and the black parents in Montclair. I'm so extremely proud. And their proposal should be submitted around the nation.
Yeah.
And speaking to that, I'd like to ask you, because this reminds me of Ice Cube. And it reminds me of Ice Cube's plan, a contract with Black America, and there's a lot of controversy with that. Again, folks have figured out how to divide and conquer us on that issue. Mm-hmm. So I want to ask you how you feel about that. How do you feel about Ice Cube's mission?
I have not read all the information that's out there, and nor have I seen all the video footage of him discussing it. Mm-hmm. But this is what I can clearly speak to, is all other nationalities, Irish Americans, Jewish Americans, Asian Americans, are clear that regardless of who's in office, in terms of personality, and regardless of what political party are in positions of power, we have an agenda that we're going to maintain that supersedes who's in office.
That's right.
We are the only ones whose birthing in this country started as livestock, as chattel, as enslaved individuals.
That's right.
So we are incredibly late to understanding how to move in a very social, political, and economic web called America.
Social, political, economic.
So we don't realize. So what happens is some of our most well-intended leaders and folks that are respected and celebrities that are known can't always comprehend that they have more in common than apart. And they take a slither of difference and allow it to create a wall of contention that, guess what? It happened. Those walls of contentions happen with those other groups. It's just not advertised like us.
That's right.
But because we've always literally been on display, meaning stood up and having to be bought and sold, we're still in the mentality of putting all our business in the street, especially with social media. What am I getting around to say? We need to have an agenda regardless of whether Trump or Biden wins.
That's right.
We need to have an agenda that we speak to Congress, to the House of Representatives, and every office in the land to say, whatever's going on, this is what we want to happen nationally. This is what we want to happen regionally. This is what we want to happen statewide. And this is what we want to happen locally, by county, and so on and so forth. That's how it has to be broken down. If that is what's happening, if that is what's being put forward, right now Trump is president. And as much as people saying Biden's going to win, we said this last election that Trump wasn't going to win. So I'm not hedging I'm not going to hold back any level of progress to who goes in office.
Right.
We've seen this before.
Yes.
We need to have an agenda that supersedes who's in office.
That's right.
If that indeed is what Ice Cube is trying to establish,
Yeah.
and he was smart enough not to do this on his own.
Yes.
I believe Dr. Claude Anderson has given him direction,
Yes.
and various different people who are professionals and experts in their particular fields, because no one person can come up with a plan
Right.
for Black America.
Right.
So to my understanding, he did his due diligence to meet with experts who shared that information.
Yes.
But the bottom line is that's what we need to do.
Yes.
I have no problem. We need rich debate.
And it's an agenda.
We need rich debate. Now,
Yes.
here's the thing. We've seen, the reason why he's being attacked, because we've seen Black people that are respected get paid off
That's right.
by Trump
That's right.
to be puppets,
Right.
to make Trump look like he down with Black people. And the last thing we need is somebody duping our people again.
Right.
So I understand the energy.
Yeah.
Ice Cube, are you being a puppet that's going to divide what we're trying to accomplish and getting this guy out of office?
Right.
So I understand their complaint.
Right.
But we just got to pull back and say, okay, I see what you're saying.
Right.
And we indeed need to get him out of office, but we don't need Joe Biden and Kamala Harris thinking
Exactly.
that you're going to go into office with anything other than a black agenda that we respect.
Exactly. And I think that is my concern as well. You know, we want to look at Ice Cube and say, is he being bought off and paid? All I know is I've seen the points, the 13 points, and it speaks to every aspect of the plight of Black people, similar to what you spoke to with the educational piece.
Yes.
And it encompasses that. My problem is that we continue to accept what white folks give us by saying he's not qualified. He's not qualified to speak to this plan.
Yeah.
Now, my belief is the only qualifications you need to empower Black folks is a passion, an agenda, and some balls. And who best to do that but a gangster rapper?
Yeah.
Like, I don't care who presents this. I don't care who presents it as long as it's somebody who is passionate.
Yeah.
And I think that the left's concern is that it is similar to the Lift Every Voice, I think that's the name of it, that the Democrats have put together.
Mm-hmm.
Now, my concern is I don't want to have an agenda given to us from either side. I want us to go to both sides with our agenda.
Yeah.
This is what we want you to sign. We don't want you coming up with this is what we're going to do. No, because that doesn't happen.
No. Now, it was easy. We could analyze this quickly in this way. What is Joe Biden and Ms. Harris' agenda for Irish America?
Right,
What's their agenda for Japanese Americans?
right.
What's their agenda for
LGBT.
Jewish? It doesn't exist.
Yes,
Their agenda for those groups are given to them.
right.
We're the only people sitting up here waiting for somebody to tell us the agenda we like. No.
Right.
We tell you the agenda.
Yes.
This is what I meant when I say that we
Yes.
are behind.
Yes.
We don't even, we're still catching up to the social and economic and political reality. You have to, and that's, to my understanding, that is what Ice Cube is getting at. And if that's indeed what he's trying to do, that's what we need to understand. We need to tell them our agenda.
That's right.
Even here,
That's
the
right.
reason why the position I had here in Montclair as student equity advocate, the Black parents told them the agenda.
Yes.
The other thing that we
Yes.
accomplished was the anti-racism policy. We're not going to wait for a historically
Yes.
racist institution
Yes.
to tell us this is how we're going to correct our problem.
Yes.
No, you're not.
Yes.
We're the ones who are victims.
Yes.
We're going to tell you what we don't like. Think about it.
Yes.
When we talk about the LGBTQ community, they don't ask a group of heterosexuals to come up with what you think is best for them.
Yes.
We would have a riot. You don't, when you look at what women being sexually violated and dealing with harassment, women had to tell the establishment, this is what takes place.
That's right.
We don't like it. Put it into policy, procedure,
That's right.
and law, and hold people and penalize folks for doing it.
That's right.
We're the only group that has to listen and cherry pick the status quo's agreement
That's
with
right.
what we want to do.
That's right.
No,
That's
we're
right.
going to tell you this is what we're dealing with. This is what we want you to do. And if you want us to support you, this is what you're going to follow. And if you don't, we will pull back our support.
And that is part of the brainwashing. And I know one of the things that Ice Cube mentioned was that one of the things that Black folks continue to do, historically we've done, we get on a team politically and we ride with that team, no matter what, whether there's performance or not.
Yeah.
And the loyalty is too great. regardless of who wins the election, we have to come with an agenda and we have to have demands. And my biggest concern is that, because as a black woman, we've heard that black women are the backbone to the Democratic Party. And my concern is we're just so happy that Ms. Harris is there that we're just going to ride with her. And that's a concern that I have.
Yeah.
That's a concern. So, Brother Joseph, I want you to speak to your foundation, because you have an amazing foundation that speaks to all of this and more.
Absolutely.
Visions and Dreams.
Yes, Visions and Dreams Foundation is a nonprofit organization, and our two main components is equity and advocacy. Mm-hmm. When I say equity, obviously, due to my background and what we've discussed here, is fighting to correct the inequities in our educational system. Mm-hmm. So that involves meeting with school districts, doing professional development workshops, sessions, and trainings about cultural responsiveness, implicit bias, infusing African historical accomplishments into the curriculum. People have to be trained. You can't ask the same establishment that's given misinformation to now suddenly teach the truth. They don't even if they saw it, they wouldn't know how to do it.
Right.
That's like showing, just because a person can identify what a sickness is, if you've not gone to the school, done the training a doctor has done, you still can't do surgery.
Right.
And so that is what we provide. Right. Not only in education though, corporations and other organizations, if they want to be educated on correcting the inequities in the services they provide or the employment construct of their company, they can call on Visions and Dreams to partner with them to have better outcomes. Mm-hmm. But also, the advocacy is because, listen, Dr. Martin Luther King and Malcolm X, who people love to call their names and roll off their lips, they died broke and lonely. And so I say that to say that there are advocates who, like Kalia Sweat, who are not getting paid big dollars like so many sellouts are, who are disenfranchising our children generation after generation. Absolutely. I want to provide supports for those advocates.
That's right.
So that's another thing that we do.
That's right. Providing
legal representation for African Americans who are sitting in jail because they simply can't afford bail. They're not even charged. They're not even it's not even deemed guilty yet, but they just can't afford to get out of jail.
That's right.
You have African Americans who've been shot and killed, and their families, Breonna Taylor, trying to defend. So providing funds for families that are having battles with the criminal justice system is also something that Visions and Dreams Foundation does, along with giving school supplies and for families that need help with rent relief. Mm-hmm. So there's a wide range of things, but the two main components is equity and advocacy for African Americans.
Right.
We're the only people that have to apologize and stop and say, well, we mean this for everybody. Yes. And look historically at this country. Every time we're fighting for our rights, somebody gets on our coattails, ends up getting laws, legislation, and representation, and we still up here trying to prove in 2020 that Black Lives Matter.
Because we're talking about the Black agenda, and that is where I am today too in my movement and in my life. I am talking about Black children. I'm not talking about children of color. I'm not talking about Black and brown children. I am talking about the civil rights of Black children.
That's right.
And again, I commend you in your efforts. I commend the sisters, Ms. Sweat. I'm saying to you, please roll this plan out nationally because it's needed. And parents need to have a support group. They need that. And I don't care from what socioeconomic level you come to. I've seen educated parents be intimidated by superintendents and by the board and going to IEP meetings for their special needs students. So I want to commend you, brother. We're going to see a lot more of you. Hopefully you and I are going to partnership together.
Yes, and I definitely want to give my website.
Your website, your website for people.
You go
for donations and for assistance.
Absolutely. That's important. I'm glad you said that. Not just for donations, but if you're in a need, then also go as well. The site is www.vdfd.org. vdfd.org, and that VDFD stands for Visions and Dreams Foundation. And so you can go and partner with us and connect. We're national.
Okay.
Of course, there's not a lot of us.
Right.
But what we do is, I don't believe in reinventing the wheel.
That's right.
We partner with folks where they are
That's
and
right.
say what is needed, because you know the town better than us.
That's right. That's right.
Yes.
Yes. Yeah. Well, I want to thank you again so much for taking the time, having this conversation. I want to please remind black parents, whether you're in New Jersey, wherever you are in the country, please advocate for your children. You have the right. There are laws, and we know that a lot of times these laws are not used for us, but these laws have loopholes.
That's right.
And that's what we have to learn how to do. And please, let's stop being so loyal to these institutions that were not designed for us.
Absolutely.
Thank you so much, Brother Joseph.
Yes, indeed.
See you
You're
again
welcome.
soon.
Thank you.
Peace and progress to you all, and thank you so much for joining in.